It's always nice to keep it nicely moisturised. Hey folks, it's Finn. Welcome back folks, lovely to see you. So I am now 5 years post-op from having the very first stage of my phalloplasty surgery. And that very first stage involves taking a graft from the arm to create the penis. Finn Jr. So in today's video I want to talk about the recovery of my arm and hand, and also how the skin graft has healed over these 5 years. And I also want to talk about this tattoo which now covers my graft and is a year old. So I want to talk about the healing of that too. But before we get stuck in, if you are new to my channel, then a very, very, very big welcome. My name is Finn, and here on this channel I share my life in recovery as a gay transgender man. So you can expect to find lots of videos on gender transition, mental health, LGBT, life and personal development. So if you've been watching for a while and you haven't yet, please do hit that subscribe button. Then you'll be kept up to date with all of the regular Finstalments. Now, in terms of arm healing, I've had a lot of questions over the years about my arm, and one of the most common ones I'm asked a lot is about how much feeling I've got on my arm. And in all fairness, I don't have a lot of feeling at all. I can feel pressure, and there are some areas where I can feel a slight touch. There are some areas I touch and I can kind of feel a displaced and tingly feeling elsewhere, but generally the whole area of the graft, apart from some edges and some little bits in between, I'd say is about 80% numb. Which means I do have to be careful when I knock it because I don't notice. I was asked recently if the numbness of my arm bothers me, and to be completely honest, I hadn't really thought about it. And I guess the reason for that is because it doesn't bother me. For me, having a numb arm is completely worth it for having a functioning penis. I am so happy with the results of my lower surgery, and I'll pop a link up to a video I did recently reflecting on the whole journey. But I'm so happy with that a numb arm doesn't bother me at all. But that being said, I didn't know in the very beginning that I would have this loss of feeling in my arm. I knew all of the risks about the graft not taken and that maybe the scarring would be bad, and there was all those concerns, but I hadn't really thought about, and nobody had spoken to me about, the fact that this goes numb. And I wish they had. Now, it wouldn't have changed my decision, I'd still have made the same decision, but it would have helped me to prepare better. And this is why now I always share, and I always talk a lot about the losses and gains in phalloplasty, because there are a number of losses, and one of the biggest losses is sensation in most of your arm. And, you know, the things that go along with that, like when my partner touches my arm, I can't feel it, you know, so it's really important when we're thinking about phalloplasty to weigh up these decisions, to weigh up the loss for the gain, and work out if that is right for us. And I think acknowledging these losses and gains is a really vital part in outcomes of surgery, because when we know what we can realistically expect, we can prepare for worst case scenario, and it helps us to then adapt easier long term to the outcome. It might have helped me be more prepared, but it wouldn't have changed my decision. It doesn't bother me. I've also been asked a lot about how the arm feels from an internal perspective. People asking questions like, does the graft feel tight? And this is a really peculiar one, because it does feel really odd in ways that's quite difficult to explain. Now, most of the time, we don't notice how our arms or legs or any other part of our body feels. But if we kind of go internal and drop into kind of the sensation of our body, you can kind of feel how the inside of your arm feels, right? Whereas with this graft arm, I don't even have to think about it. It's there all the time. I can feel my arm. It is not quite a tightness, but it's a snugness. And it's almost like I'm wearing a long sleeve t-shirt that's quite close fitting. Or almost like a bit of a heaviness, like there's something heavy in the middle. And I'm aware of it all of the time. I mean, obviously I've got used to it over the 5 years, but comparing my two arms, You know, this one obviously is just an arm, but this, I can feel I'm aware of something around my arm. Did that make sense? In terms of the function of my arm, in terms of like the hand movement, arm movement, at 5 years post-op, everything's really good. It's really scary early days. Straight after the surgery, obviously your arm's in a sling and your hand is pretty much immobilised, and then over a period of weeks you have to gradually learn to re-straighten your arm, to reuse your fingers. Your fingers are numb, your thumb's numb, and it was really scary in early days to worry that it might never come back. I just couldn't straighten my arm fully, my fingers weren't working, but actually all of this comes back pretty quickly, and you're given exercises, and if you do those all the time, it does come back. Within a year, I had full use of my arm again properly, and over these years, it's come back to, I'd say, pretty much 99% what this arm is. The other tiny little percent that's missing is I have a little bit of weakness in my hands. I've always been somebody that's got quite a weak grip anyway. It's only marginally less than this one. And I talk a lot about my pincer grip and opening little things like yogurt pots. My fine motor movement there is not as good as this hand, but then it's not something I ever really notice. And I've said this all the time, that if you're somebody that's worried, that plays guitar for example, the fact that you do lots of these kind of exercises will mean you will strengthen that up afterwards. It is rare now that you get any lasting damage from this. One thing I do notice is the strength in my wrist when it's bent like this at an angle. So I notice it when I'm doing press-ups, and I think that because the skin there is obviously got no give compared to this wrist skin that would move, this is very tight. So once I'm in that position, it's almost like that just kind of digs in and my hand won't go any further. So doing things like press-ups, I notice it, but I do yoga, I do press-ups, and it's never got in the way. It's just sometimes I've worn a wrist support because it doesn't feel as secure on that position as this hand does. But these are me being really picky, because in general, this hand isn't that far different to this hand. In terms of the skin quality, it's really, really good. I'm really pleased with how my graft has turned out. It does get a lot more dry than my other skin does. Skin grafts do, they don't kind of moisturise themselves, they need help. And I actually moisturise my arm a few times throughout the day. I carry around a little moisture stick, and I'll put a link in the description below to a blog I did recently where I shared some of my favourite skincare products. And I carry this little stick around, and then throughout the day, if I just notice it's feeling a bit tight or it's looking a bit dry, I can just quickly apply something. And then as long as I do that, it's absolutely fine. Plus I smell nice. Someone asked me a really poignant question about ageing and how this will age, and the truth is I really don't know. This is still a young surgery, and there aren't that many older trans guys to actually look at what happens, but I expect, like with any other skin, it will age, it will get thinner, it will lose its elasticity, and so for this reason I also make sure to keep it well moisturised to help prevent a lot of that. And I do my best to keep it out of the sun as much as possible. And when I am outside, I use a really good sunblock, even in winter, so that I can help to prevent any damage from the sun as well, and just look after my skin as best as possible so that it will age as best as it possibly can. And let's talk about my lovely tattoo. So my tattoo is now a year old, and it has made so much of a difference to me. My graft actually healed really, really well. And initially my idea of having a tattoo was to cover a scar, but actually it didn't really need covering. It was fine, it had healed well. And a lot of my reasons for having this, if you haven't seen my earlier blog, and I'll link you if you haven't, watch that in a minute, is I wanted to mark the end of my transition with a tattoo, and also I had some of my mum's ashes put in this tattoo as well. Phoenix rising from the fire in more ways than one. But actually, by having this tattoo, it has really increased my self-esteem, because I'm not conscious of new people looking at my arm all the time, because I'm used to that happening. I have self-harm scars, and then I had this massive scar. And so anytime I met new people, their eyes would soon be dropping and then looking at my arms. And that doesn't happen so much now, and that's actually really nice. But I haven't got to worry about explaining a big arm scar. You can only really tell I've got a scar under this if you look close up. So it's really helped my confidence and my self-esteem. And now when people want to look at my arm, it's for a nice reason. In terms of my tattoo healing, it's done really, really well. Now, tattooing a graft, tattooing scars can be really tricky. It's worth noting that this is a double thickness skin graft. Some surgeons still use the single thickness, and I'm not quite sure how well that will take. If you are thinking about having your graft tattooed, always, always, always ask your surgeon, your consultant's advice before doing anything. I've been asked how long you should wait to have it tattooed, and that really is quite personal on how you've healed. They say generally wait between 3 and 5 years until that scar, that graft has fully matured and settled. And mine had fully matured and settled at about 3 years. So 4 years felt right for me to go and have it done. It's also really important to make sure that you find a tattooist who is happy and knows what they're doing when it comes to tattooing scars and grafts, because it's a completely different skin. It's a much more delicate skin to tattoo, so they must know what they're doing. One of the issues you'll probably find with tattooists is they don't like to touch grafts because there is no guarantee how a tattoo will look. And what often can happen with a tattoo on a graft is that it blurs, the lines aren't crisp, and the colour drops out. Now, I was lucky to have a friend who is a tattooist. He's experienced with covering grafts and scars as well. He's done my other tattoo, so I trusted him. And he was also able to say to me, look, I'm going to do my best, but there aren't, of course, guarantees. And I was happy with that. I was happy to try. And I'll put a link to my tattooist below as well, Silas. He's absolutely incredible. He's a really lovely gent, as well as a talented artist, and he did such a great job. As it stands, my graft took a tattoo very, very well. We weren't sure, of course, when we started. We were just going to play it by ear and see what happened, but it went so well that we sat for the full 8 hours and managed to get most of this done. You can see that I still have this part to be finished here, but of course I couldn't get that done this year because Rona. But it took really, really well. You can see here that there are a couple of little areas where the colour has dropped out, but everywhere else it's taken. The lines are crisp, the colours stay crisp. It's done really well. So next time when I have my next sitting, we'll be finishing off the parts underneath and also putting some new colour in the parts that's dropped out. It might then mean a third and final one just to fill in any other colour that drops out, but overall, really, really pleased. In fact, it's come out far better than I imagined it would, and I absolutely love it. And eventually this will all join up and I'll have one big sleeve. One thing to note about dry skin, I notice it really much easier actually now that I've got a tattoo, because whenever my skin gets dry, this almost looks kind of dusty, and then I know it's dry, so I put moisturiser on. So actually this is helping me to moisturise my arm more, because I pay more attention and notice when my skin is dry. One thing I want to quickly mention that I always forget to mention is about the replacement skin grafts and how they are healing. Because here in the UK, when they take the skin from the forearm to create the penis, they then take replacement skin from underneath your bum cheeks. They take, it's about kind of a couple of inches from under each bum cheek, goes from the top of your thighs to just under your cheeks, and they take a slice of skin from either side, and that goes back on your arm. And then what they do is they bring the skin up from the top of your thigh under your bum cheek and staple you up. Yes, it's as painful as it sounds. So you effectively get a bum lift, and that skin is then on your arm. So yes, I can say kiss my. And now that took the longest to heal than anything. In fact, even at 5 years post-op, those scars under my bum cheek are still quite red. They're not quite as white as all my other scars. They will do, obviously, eventually. It's just an area that's really difficult to heal. But in terms of the actual area itself, it used to be very tight, but over the last couple of years, it's really settled and I don't notice them now. The only time I'm ever aware of it is if I sit on a really hard plastic chair and then I find I can get a bit of soreness there. But apart from that, they're really healed. And of course, they don't show unless you're really looking for them, and most people aren't, of course. But my partner Chris obviously sees them when I bend over, and he says it just looks like my bum is smiling. That's a lovely vision to leave you with, isn't it? I really hope that was helpful. If you have any other questions about the arm graft or about phalloplasty or anything else, please do feel free to leave me a comment in the section below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you think anyone else will benefit from it, please give it a share. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. And if that was too much information, then just relax and watch another one of my phalloplasty videos. Take care of yourselves, folks. Keep on keeping on. See you next week.